Hello soulmates, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Funny Gregory. So in today's class, I'll be teaching you how to make this basic dress from scratch. So in the last class, I taught you how to draft this, but today you're going to be making this. If this is what you're interested in, please subscribe, like, and share. Let's get started.
So for this tutorial, the materials I have is this white right here and my tape alongside my scissor, okay, and then the pattern that we had drafted before. So I'm going to show you how to sew a basic dress using these tools that I have here. So the very first thing I am going to do is to cut this pattern. Remember, we had this pattern, okay, we had the front and the back together and I did not cut that out. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. And also remember that this was the front and this is the back that had this zipper allowance. So we're going to cut the zipper allowance into the back pattern. Then I would go ahead and just cut this out as so, okay? I would cut this out so that I will be able to have what I would use in cutting out my fabric. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead and fold this fabric into two. Remember, you're folding your fabric into two as so, okay? So I'm going to use my iron and press this down. This is very important as this leaves your dress looking very neat, okay? Ironing leaves your dress looking very neat. So I am going to be placing this pattern right here. Now this is the front side of my pattern paper. So I'll be placing this right here, okay? Since I already had about 1 inch extra for the seam allowance, I'm not going to be adding any allowance again, okay? So all I need to do is to just place my pattern like this, and if your pattern paper is twisted, just go ahead and press it down, okay, so that you would have a smooth cutting. Now I want to use the full length of this dress, which is of this fabric, which is 34 inches. So I'll be using about 34 inches for this dress right here, okay? And I have an extra 0.5 inches that I am going to be using for the stitching allowance, right? So I'll go ahead and I would cut this out. Okay, so I already have the back pattern cut out, or the front pattern cut out like this. So the next thing I'm going to do is to cut out the back pattern of my basic dress. All right, so I'm done with this pattern paper. So using my pencil, I am going to be placing the dots that I want to use here. Somehow you can decide to use a sharp object, okay, to form this dot. So at this point right here, I already have my pattern, my dot mapped out. So this is where I'm going to be placing my dot. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn around, maybe do the same thing over on the front side. So this is how it is going to be over on the other side, and I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing. All right, so I can decide to say, okay, fine, what I'm going to do is to pick a sharp object and pierce this part as so. All right, I'm going to show you how to do that. But when using a sharp object, be very careful not to cut out your client's fabric, because you'd be in trouble if you do that, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and mark the point at which I'm going to be placing my dart on both sides, or I am going to be using a pin, a scissor, whatsoever it is that I have found that is sharp but not sharp enough to pierce my dress. So I am going to be using that to make a mark right here. Whichever one favors you, you can do it. All right, whichever one favors you, you can do it. I can just go ahead, place my mark right here, pick it up, and I already have a point right here. And I'm going to do the same thing over on the other side, and then I have my dots formed. All right, And that is it. It's as simple as that, okay? So I already have my front pattern cut out. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out the back piece of this basic dress right here. Just like I did for the front piece, I am going to be folding this over like so as well. So this trick I'm going to be showing you right here is what you can use to manage your fabric, all right? So let me say you check the smaller parts and then this side is a bit bigger and you know that the armhole side is actually smaller, okay? So place your fabric towards that direction to be able to manage it. That way, whatever is going to be on this other side, the hipper part would take the bigger side and the armhole part would take this smaller side. So I just did that and I have my fabric managed, okay? So I'm going to place it as so and I am going to iron it out first. So this is the zipper allowance right here. So I have my zipper allowance ready. So I'm just going to go ahead and I will cut it out just like I did for the other one. Just like the front piece, I also have my back piece cut out as so. So this is it. I have imputed the allowance right here that I needed, and I have also added allowance here that I needed, okay? So what I'm going to do next is to find the dart point, okay? To do this, use the same method that I had used to get the darts for the front piece, and then use a pencil to mark the point at which the dart is going to be. So I'm going to cut this open right here because my zipper allowance will be cut open, okay? So I'll just go ahead and I would cut this open as so. So right here I have my front piece and my back piece cut out as so. And of course this is a basic dress, so I won't be adding any lining to this dress as so. So I'll be showing you how to cut out the facing for both the front and the back neckline, all right? So you're going to be using a facing to turn this out. So I have my fabric right here and I'm just going to go ahead and cut out the facing for both the front neck lines, all right? So this is it right here. To do this, it is not difficult. To do this, place your fabric right here and the piece you're going to be using would be under your fabric as so. So I'm going to be folding this into two. I'm going to be folding this into two as so. And I am going to make sure that it gets to my armpit because I want to show you how to make invisible shoulder sewing. Okay, I want to show you how to sew with an invisible shoulder, all right? So at this point right here, I am going to start from here and this is where my facing is going to stop, all right? So I would press this down like this. I would press this down and I would sew it. Now when you're doing this, make sure that it is going to be either the wrong side facing each other or the right side facing each other. Currently I have the wrong sides facing each other. What I mean by that is making sure that the beautiful side of the fabric is facing the beautiful side of your facing, or better still, the other side inside, okay, of your fabric is facing the inside of your facing. Okay, so I have my fabric held down, so I'm just going to go ahead and I will cut this out following the way it is, all right? So this is basically what cutting a facing looks like. Now what does a facing do? Instead of using a lining, a facing gives you that neat finishing, all right? When you don't want to use a lining for your fabric, you can use a facing. So I'm going to show you how this facing will turn out to look. So this is it. When I turn my dress open as so, my facing is going to be here and I'll stitch this down and turn it over to the other side. All right, so that is what my facing is going to be doing. So I am going to now go ahead and cut the facing for the back piece just like I did for the front piece. Okay, so I have both my front piece and my back piece cut out for the turning, okay, the facing. So I'm going to go ahead and start my stitching. All right, so I'll go ahead and start stitching this dress. So to do this, I would go ahead and place the right side of my piece over on the right side of the fabric together, and I would go ahead and I would stitch it. So this is what it's going to look like when you place this, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this by 0.5 inches or 0.2 inches depending. All right, so I'll go ahead and I'll stitch my neck like this, and then I would do the same thing for the back piece, okay? So just take it to the machine and stitch it round as so. So I'm actually done stitching the facing together, okay? So this is what it looks like after stitching the face. Now this is the front part and these are the back piece each, okay? So I've stitched this out together. All right, this is it right here, stitched out carefully, and this part right here. Okay, so I've done this right here. Now this does not end here. If I go ahead and turn this over here, I won't have a smooth neckline. All right, so what I'm going to do next is to notch on each of my neckline. So I'm going to show you what I mean by notching on my neckline. I'm done notching. I am going to take this to the machine and I am going to top stitch. All right, now when top stitching, make sure that this part right here faces the piece, okay, the facing that you're going to do and not the main fabric. All right, when it faces this turning face is going to hide, right? But when it faces the fabric, it's going to show. So we don't want it to show, so you're just going to go ahead, place it as so, and top stitch on this to the end of your fabric. So when I'm done top stitching, I'm going to bring this and you're going to see what this looks like. So I've gone ahead and I have top stitched this, okay? So this is what top stitching actually looks like. So I went ahead to sew some stitches on top of this other stitch right here. That's what we call top stitch. When you sew on top of, right, you top stitch. So I am actually top stitching, and the reason I said that you cannot top stitch over on this other side is because this is the main fabric. If this shows, it's not going to be fine. So this is going to be hiding. That's why we top stitch on this other piece, okay, this facing piece. So after that, the next thing I'm going to do is to iron this down. All right, so just watch what I am going to do. So first of all, before I iron that down, this is what I'm going to do. I would go ahead right here and arrange this on top of my ironing board, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead right here and I will press this down. So now this is the finishing I was talking about for the neckline. So we already have the neckline looking like this. So I'm going to go ahead right here and I'll iron the front side of this dress. Now this is actually laid as much as I wanted, but in as much as it's down, okay, this part is jumping around. So to hold this down, I would go ahead and use my hemming gum, okay? So I like to use my hemming gum because that would actually hold my neck properly. So I'm going to open my hemming gum as so. open my dress this way, and I am going to place this all around it. Okay, so this is what I am going to do. I'm going to place it around like so. And I'm going to fold it together so that it would lie properly for like ever. Okay, so I'm going to place this down here. Now notice what I did. Okay, before I placed my hemming gum, which I know that once I place my hemming gum, that's like final. Before I do that, I made sure that I ironed this down on my own. Okay, ironed this down and made it lie down. If I don't do like that, by the time you iron with the hemming gum, it should be running up and down. So make sure that you are able to press it down first before placing your hemming gum. Okay. Now I would do the same thing for the back, and I would do this off camera for the sake of time. So this is what the finishing part of my neckline looks like. Okay, after I am done with the hemming. Okay, so this is what it looks like, and it can stay properly for me to be able to use it. All right, now we are done fixing the neckline. All right, the next thing that I am going to be doing is to show you how to fix the darts. So you remember earlier that I had marked out the point at which this dart is going to be. Now this is a white fabric, so I might have considerations on if I should draw my dart here or there. But since this is a beginner class, I am going to show you how to form this in order to be able to get the dart. So because this is a beginner class, I am going to be showing you how to do that easily. Okay, remember we had drafted our dart on a pattern paper. So to pass it over, we're going to do the same thing we did again. So this is where our dart started and this is where it ended. This is the center. So all I need to do is to just use a pencil and faintly draw my lines together. Now draw these lines to make sure that it does not appear on this other side. Okay, make sure that your lines are not deep enough to appear. Just like I did for the normal dart, I'm just going to measure about 5 inches and also do the same thing over here. And then I am going to draft both of them to meet up with this. Let the lines be faint so that you don't have to take it over to the other side, and also make sure that the lines are bold enough for you to see. Okay, so either ways you can see, but the lines are not going to be appearing on the other side. Now this is just a way of saying I want to draft the dart. Remember, if you're holding the dart, this is how it is going to be. Okay, so now this basically, after drawing this, now we're going to be using this to learn how darts are being sewn. So now darts naturally are being sewn like this. So when you put your dress together, you start from this point at which the dart will start, okay? And then coming over here, as you're coming, it's more like as you're coming, everything is slanted until it gets to this point. So I would even advise, as time goes on, you would get used to this, of course, but since you're just starting out, this is going to be what you would use in order to be able to get used to making a dart yourself. Okay, so you can decide to just mark about half an inch from the midpoint over here and just stitch to reach the midpoint, then stitch to reach the end point as so. So I'm going to use the same technique, and I am going to make my darts both on the back piece and on the front piece. Okay, so I'm going to be doing that right away. Then I'm going to show you how the darts looks. Okay, so after fixing the darts, this is what my dart actually looks like on this other side. All right, so it starts from this point right here, gets to the midpoint, which is the half length, and then moves towards the hips. Okay, so at this point right here, the dart is going to this half length. Remember, the half length of a body, right, goes thinner and then expands again towards the hip. So this is exactly what the dart is meant for. So now I am going to be ironing out my darts. I have showed you how to iron this dart, so I'm going to go ahead and iron the rest of the darts off the camera. So I am done ironing out all the darts that we have here. And if you notice one pattern in these darts, I'm ironing my darts to the left side, okay? That's to the stitching area and not to the center. So this is basically how to iron out your dart when you're ironing a dart like this, okay? And I did the same thing over on this other side as so. So make sure you iron your darts and let it be as neat as this, okay? Now after the darts, the next thing we're going to do is to be joining the shoulders together. So on the back piece, I am going to be opening up the shoulder like this, and then I will also open up the shoulder of the front piece like so. Now using the back piece, right sides facing each other, I am going to be placing it like so. Okay, so I will be doing that again for you to understand. Let's do that again, okay? So now this is my front piece laid down as so. So I want to join the shoulder, and of course this is the shoulder of my front piece, right? So I am going to be picking my one of the back pieces right here, and make sure that the size you're picking is aligning with each other. So if you notice, if I place it this way, it's going to align with the armhole as so. So this is the side that matches this neckline right here. So I'm going to be picking this right here, the shoulder, and then open it. Now you're not doing this on the neckline. Remember, you're doing it on the shoulder line. So this is the neckline and this is the shoulder line. I hope you understand, right? So I'm going to have to pick this up like so, open it like this, and then pick the front as so, and also open it like this, okay? And I am going to go ahead and stitch this to the end. So I'll be starting from the midpoint. The reason I'm starting from the center is so that it will not shift. So I'll stitch from here down to this point as so, okay? And then I will turn around and stitch down to this point as so. So I'm going to take it to the machine and stitch it so that you can see what this is all about. And then I would also carry the other piece right here, aligning it with the side that matches. I would do the same thing, all right? Now I am done stitching on my shoulders, and this is how the shoulder is going to look like on the inside after stitching it the way I showed you. And then this is how it is also going to look like on the outside, all right? So this is an invisible shoulder stitching, all right? There are some other ways you can stitch your shoulder, but this particular one, you just need to stitch it like this, all right? So this is actually the easiest way to stitch your invisible shoulder. So I'm going to go ahead and start from the inside here to iron out this shoulder, okay? Now, after fixing the shoulder, the next thing I'm going to do is to drag the sleeve, which I am going to be fixing on the dress, okay? So this is the material I want to be using to fix my sleeve. Okay, so I just want something different. I don't want it to be all white. So I'm going to be measuring, showing you how to draft a sleeve. Now, this is not going to be a detailed tutorial on how to draft a sleeve, because I am going to be making a more detailed tutorial on how to draft a sleeve, both the long and the short sleeve, okay? So for this particular tutorial, I'm just going to go ahead and show you how to just draft a basic sleeve as swift as possible. So right here, the length I want to use for the sleeve is going to be about 7 inches, okay? I'll call it maybe 8 inches is what I want to use. Okay, now on this part right here, now this is the center, okay? I'm going to iron this side so that it will stay. So on this center right here, I'm going to be drafting about 5 inches over here, okay? So I'll be doing 5 inches. I hope you can see with the pencil I am using, and then I'm going to also draft about 5 inches over here. Okay, so using my ruler right here, I am just going to go ahead and I will just mark a line to meet up to this point as so. Okay, so this is my line right here, so it's meeting up with this line right here, this 5 inches line right here. And then I am going to go ahead using a free hand. I will just go ahead and I will draft Remember I said I'm going to be making a detailed tutorial, so I don't want this to take so much of my time, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and use a detailed just dropped my sleeve out right here. Okay, so look out for the detailed tutorial. I'm going to make sure that you know when this is going to be posted. All right, so I don't want my sleeve to be too long, so I'm just going to go ahead and take about 1 inch after this 8 inch that I had marked right here. So basically this is what my sleeve is going to look like. So at this point right here on the mid arm, I have about 12 inches. So I'm going to be dividing this into two, and I am going to have 6 inches right here. So I'll be adding an extra 1 inch or ½ inch for my stitching allowance, and then I am going to curve this to meet up as so. So basically this is what my sleeve is going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out, and then I would replace this, use this, and cut out the other side of the sleeve. Now after cutting out my sleeve, the next thing I am going to do is to notch the center of this sleeve. So I'm going to hold my sleeve like this and then just notch it as so, right? And the same thing over here, I am just going to go ahead and notch the sleeve like this, okay? Now after notching my sleeve, I already have my sleeve here, so I'm going to just go ahead and bend about ½ inch, okay, or about 1 inch, and iron it out. Now this is the part at which I am going to be stitching on the top. So right here, I'm just going to iron it so that it will lie. Now I'll go ahead and trim out all the excesses, if I have any, on the shoulder part at which I am going to be fixing the sleeve. Alright, so if there's any excesses you had, just make sure that you trim that out so that you would have perfect fixing. Now on this part right here, I am going to pick the notched points, okay? Now on the shoulder right here, I'm going to pick up the notched point as so. Okay, this is the notched point. I'm going to be placing it on this center. Okay, so you're going to be using this place like this center, this threaded part, as if it's the center. So I'll just place it right here on this part, and I am going to go ahead and stitch it all round. So I'm going to stitch this, and then while I'm stitching it, I'll be pulling it together, okay, to meet up with this point. So when I stitch on this point right here, I am going to be, let me take you to the machine and show you how to stitch on this point as so. So now to stitch on the shoulder right here, I am going to pick my sleeve, okay? So I'll pick my sleeve and then place this notched part over on this point as so, okay? So I'm going to place it on the center. So this is the center, remember. Now after placing that, I am going to be placing the center under my machine, okay? And then I'm going to start stitching it. Now after doing this, I am going to turn around and do the same thing on this side right here, okay? So I'm going to also start this from the center right here, and then I would sew it round, okay? So starting from the center, I would pick my dress and make sure that it aligns with the sleeve right here. Now after doing this, this is what it looks like, okay? This is what my sleeve looks like at this point, okay? So I am just going to go ahead and stitch these two close up before I take it to the iron. So I'll go ahead and do the same thing I just did on this side, on this other side right here, before I am able to do whatever I want to do next. So this is what this looks like. Now the next thing I am going to do is to hem my sleeve as so. Okay, so I'm going to be hemming the sleeve like this. Okay. So after doing this, the next thing I'm going to do is to close my sleeve. So I'm going to close the sleeve alongside closing the body part of my dress. Okay, so closing my sleeve, remember we had about ½ inch for the stitching allowance, so I'm going to be taking that ½ inch, but when we get to this part I'll be taking my 1 inch allowance. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and place this as so on the machine, and I am going to stitch it. So now when I get to this point right here, I am going to be using about 1 inch allowance. Okay, now you make sure that you use your tape when you're measuring this. Okay, so now I have my sleeve stitched on this side, and I've gone ahead to close this side also. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just press all the points that I have stitched. I love to press my dresses because they actually give it this professional and beautiful look. So I'm going to go ahead using my iron. I will just go ahead and press it as so. Now we are close to finishing our dress. Okay, so this is what the dress looks like before I fix the zip and then run the hemming. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead right here and hem this dress as so. Okay, I won't be stitching my zip in this particular tutorial. I'm going to be having a special tutorial on how to stitch your zip, on how to sew your zip properly. Okay, for now I just went ahead to stitch up to this point so that I'll be able to go ahead and hem my dress. So this dress is going to end with just the hemming. In the next class I will teach you how to fix your zipper. The zipper allowance was about 1 inch bigger. Okay, so I just used 1 inch for the zipper allowance, and I went ahead to stitch this out. So this is what we have right here, and this is before our dress is ready. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and stitch the down part of my dress. That's I'm going to go ahead right here and hem my dress. So I'll be folding this first by half, and then I would fold again, and I would do the same thing all through the hem of this dress. So after doing this, I would take it to the machine and I would follow this line and stitch it all round. Then I'll bring it back. Okay, so I'm actually done stitching on the hemming part of my dress. I'm done hemming my dress, and this is how neat it looks right on the hemming part. And the reason this is so is because I had folded this and ironed it down before ironing it on my fabric. So this basically is how to go about hemming your dress neatly. Okay, so you need to see this is how the inside of my dress looks like. It is also neat inside as well as it is neat outside. So we're actually done with everything except fixing the zipper, and I am going to be showing you how to do that in the next tutorial.
Don't forget to click on the subscribe button so that you'd see when the tutorial is posted. See you in the next class.